On today's show, Terik Parascak, the Capitals prospect that kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the past 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, the boys are back in town as Capitals players are showing up early. It is going to be August 1st tomorrow, and already we've seen Logan, Thompson, and Matt Roy. Yes, the hockey season will be here a whole lot sooner than anyone thinks. I'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about for Nicklas Bäckström, there were only 2 options for him, the Capitals and Brynäs. And we're lucky enough to say that Nicklas Bäckström chose to play his career in Washington. But just to get it going here, we're going to talk about Terik Parascak. I'm going to go ahead and say a Capitals prospect that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And this is based on requests from you, the listeners, that I hear this, and also the ones I'm talking about on YouTube, that they're like, Dan, you talk about Crystal, you talk about Leonard, you talk about this guy. What happened with Terik Parascak? And he's an interesting player, drafted a lot higher than anyone thought, higher than he thought, and a bit of a polarizing player that there is some upside, but I think that he is going to need some more development. He is going to need some more work before he is NHL ready. So let's dive into that in segment number 1, talking about Terik Parascak. Still a work in progress, but is he worth the wait? He is one of the more polarizing prospects in the Caps system right now. That when we talk about players that are, next level soon, right? I'm talking Leonard, I'm talking Crystal, Miroshnichenko, Ilya Protas. But it wasn't that long ago. As a matter of fact, it was last summer that the Capitals selected Terik Parascak, number 17 overall. And it was interesting because Brian McClellan called out a name that no one really expected, Terik Parascak from the Prince George Cougars. And it's interesting. If you can recall back, if you watched the draft, the camera cut to him and he's like, wait, me? That even it caught Terik himself by surprise. Now, to be clear here, when I say polarizing, there is some up and there is some down, and I'm going to cover the up and the down. And I'm also going to talk about how he excelled because he was surrounded by some truly great players the season before. And then, well, one of the players I'm going to talk about went pro, and it made it a little bit interesting. So when we talk about Terik Parascak, he had just come off a ridiculous, is what I'm going to say, 105-point season in the WHL. 43 goals, 62 assists. That in and of itself is going to put you on the radar of a lot of different teams. He was lighting it up. But the thing is, the numbers, if you look at them, were loud. I mean, 43 goals, 62 assists, 105-point season. But the scouts were raising their eyebrows. There was some concern there. His skating, not great, not even average. You take a look at him overall, he's got the smarts. He's got a good edge. His hockey IQ is off the charts, always seems to be in the right spot. If you look at the footage of him, he is a good hockey player, but there are definitely things that he needs to work on, like when I talk about him being NHL ready. And that's the thing with Parascak. You love the brain, you love the hockey IQ, but you worry about the legs. And so that was then. Now, fast forward 1 year, the production dipped. He had 82 points in 59 games. Still solid, but no Zac Funk beside him that year. And that mattered. Funk went pro, and suddenly Parascak had to do more of the lifting. And, well, that's not really his game yet. And could it be at some point? I guess we don't know. He's still a young guy. He's still working into it. I think, the Capitals are hoping that he can refine that 105-point season. And, not to say that an 82-point season isn't great, but he was able to achieve great things, I think. And as a matter of fact, I know is because he was surrounded by a great player, like I said, in Funk. When he went pro and he was out of the mix, you saw him struggle. Now, when you take a look at him, the thing that I notice is that you see flashes, like in the playoffs. Game 1 against Portland, he scores the OT winner, coming up clutch. There's a lot to like there. Adds 3 points, clutch. That's what you want to see. A guy that can step up on the bigger stage at that level and deliver in OT. That is something that is really going to, like I say, put you on the radar of a lot of different teams, the team that you're associated with. And the Caps bring him to Hershey as a black ace. He makes his NHL debut at 18 years old. And that's rare. That shows belief. And I think that, the Capitals still have a lot of faith in him. And, I don't think that, he has lost a tremendous amount of favor within the organization. I just think that, like I say, they're hoping more for the 105-point season than the 82. And when I talked about his skating, when I talked about his legs, that was the initial assessment when he was first being scouted and that kind of thing. That was the book on him. He has shown some improvement, but he still has a ways to go. So, the thing of it is here, I'm just going to be honest with you. Can I be honest with you? I think I can. His skating has got to improve if he wants to be, a real top 6 guy. And, when Brian McClellan, and the Capitals took that leap of faith and, selected him, well, that showed something, right? Ross Mahoney and his crew. He's going to need to move better, like a lot better. If not, maybe he ends up more of a third-line complementary guy who needs a driver on his line to unlock his game. Think Zac Funk, that kind of thing, that he plays well with a supporting cast. Maybe not a guy that can, like I said earlier, do the heavy lifting. But fast forward to the present moment, and things are going well. He's getting some recognition. He's got a huge summer. He'll be at the World Junior Showcase. First time wearing a Team Canada sweater. All eyes will be on him. And, an excellent opportunity to show what he has in the tank and to see the improvement that you think had to be made over this summer. That's what, was said. How is he going to progress over the summer? Well, he'll be at that World Junior Showcase, and we'll see what he has in the tank. It'll be interesting to see how he performs. But, it'll be a good test for him to see, on a bigger stage, how he performs. And, like I say, I don't think the Capitals are writing him off. It's just that, of course, Leonard is on the team now, and Crystal very well might be. Miro, these kind of guys, I can envision a path to the NHL roster easier and quicker than I can with Terik Parascak. And even Ilya Protas, which is a younger guy. And the one thing about the Capitals organization is their prospect pool, and just in general is some of the best in the entire NHL. So I think he was a good pick, but I think a little bit of a work in progress, I think, is suffice to say. All right, so coming up here after the break, the boys are back in town. We saw LT, we saw Matt Roy. Oh, yeah, the hockey season is going to be here sooner than anyone thinks. I'll break it all down straight ahead. We've all been there before, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. And listen, we've all been there before. Your favorite band, your favorite performer is coming to town, but you can't find tickets. Well, take the stress out of it with Game Time. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. That's crazy. And now you can save up to 60% with their killer last minute deals. Are you tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Well, Game Time Zone Deals picks the best seats in the section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the second segment here, can you believe it that players are already showing up early at camp, or I guess these informal skates, I guess you could say. But, you take a look at it, it seems like it wasn't too long ago that I was talking about the Capitals and the playoffs and all of that. Well, you know how it is. The summer absolutely flies. And now I'm recording this on the evening of July 31st. You might be listening to this on August 1st, that the hockey season is going to be here quicker than any of us think. And, two players in particular, there's more and more showing up every day, but so far the names and the faces that have been seen are Logan Thompson and also Matt Roy. Two established players, and they're going to go into their second year within the organization. That speaks volumes of their commitment, of their character, and how seriously they want to hit the ground running. But also, I think, shows that they maybe have a chip on their shoulder, that they really want to take it to the other teams to start the season. So let's talk about that in segment 2 as we talk about the hockey season. And can you believe we're almost there? Caps back on the ice at MedStar. There was some video footage from Terik Parascak, from Monumental. And it was good to see, them getting in some skating, getting in some work. And, hockey's on the mind. I'm a baseball guy too. It was the trade deadline today. So it's kind of a dichotomous nature where on one side, I'm thinking baseball because it's summer and, this Nationals team is a mess. And then I'm also thinking hockey. And actually hockey puts me in a better frame of mind because the hockey team, the Capitals, well, they're actually pretty good. And kind of also tells you how things could have gone awry if the Capitals really went deep into a rebuild like the Nats did. But let's bring it back to hockey because this is a hockey podcast. So talking about Logan Thompson and Matt Roy, like I said, two players going into their second year with the Capitals and established names, not guys that are, fringe players looking, to maybe cross my fingers and toes, make the roster. They're going to be here. But, it just shows their commitment and how they want to take it seriously. These were the two of the team's biggest off-season moves last summer, and they're already back in practice gear, sweaters on, drills going, and they're not just out there messing around. Goalie coach Scott Murray is running the sessions. Real work is being done. It's not, just taking a couple laps around at MedStar. They're getting in some real work. And let's talk about Logan Thompson. Just to get it going here, the first of the two players I'm going to mention is, a guy that really, I think, revitalized his career. Now, not to say that when he was playing with Vegas, he was this horrible player, but I think that he had a chip on his shoulder with the Vegas Golden Knights because, the coaches, and they said, we hear a lot about the goalies out here. It's primarily the defense. And he mentioned that in jest when he was first traded for and acquired by the Capitals. And he did that. One of the front runners for a lion's share of the season for the Vezina, if you can believe it. He won the starting job outright, finished with a 31-6-6 record. Crazy. 910 save percentage, fourth in Vezina voting. If it wasn't for that time that he missed, he very well could have been closer. I don't think that. Listen, there's better options, but I don't think he would have won the Vezina, but I think he would have been closer to winning it. And the Capitals, well, they felt very confident in what they saw from him, because you remember going into last season, there was questions about, is it Charlie Lindgren or is it going to be Logan Thompson? And they're like, well, we're not going to name a starter here. We're not going to do it. But it became quite apparent early on that Logan Thompson was the guy. And they kind of made their intentions known when they signed him to a 6-year, $35 million extension. Is that a long contract? Yes. Is that a long contract for a goalie? Yes. So, the thing of it is, it's a 6-year deal. How is he going to be in year 4, for example? 35 million is a big bite out of the LT apple, but that's all the part and parcel of modern day hockey or professional sports in general. And the good news is, let's not talk about how he's going to be 4 years from now. Let's talk about season number 2. He's sticking around in DC this summer, serving as a guest coach at development camp with none other than Braden Holtby. He was signing autographs with Carlson and Kuzi, if you can even believe it, who was in town. Crazy storyline. The Kuzi name just continues to permeate the Capitals organization, long after he's been gone. But you love to see that. Like, he's already part of the culture here, and, a class act. I remember that he had in Vegas, after he was traded, he still followed through with his commitment to an autograph session with the Vegas Golden Knight fans. So, he could have been like, hey, see you guys. I'm a Capital now. Yeah, just okay. Let the new goalie sign your autographs. Class act, speaks volumes of his character. And for me, character goes a long way. So then let's talk about Matt Roy. One of the players that was also acquired from the Kings. Kings, and I say also because Pierre-Luc Dubois was from the Kings. A guy that, is going, the big thing for him is the Capitals struggled on the blue line, and they were looking for stability. And going into the season, Matt Roy, was kind of more of a solid defenseman, not so much offensively. But what did we see from him last season? Actually, if you can believe it, his offensive numbers were really good. Steady top 4 presence and logged big minutes. Why is that huge? John Carlson was routinely playing 20-25 plus minutes a night. Not sustainable. They brought in Matt Roy. They brought in Chychrun. And Matt Roy logged 19.53 a night last season on average. Chipped in with 24 points. It's like I'm talking about. Not his MO of being offensively. Doesn't say much, just play solid hockey. Classic, quiet defenseman. So chipped in. And all things considered, I liked Roy's game. I like Logan Thompson's game. And the fact that they're there early is huge. Now, is it just optics that they want to be first on the ice? I don't know, but it sure says something, right? They're setting the tone early. We're the guys here earlier. I'm a longtime Capitals fan, and I always remember way back when it was Michael Neuwirth. He was one of the first Capitals to always show up. You knew that the hockey season was coming, because I remember Neuwirth would sometimes show up in late July as well. And another, one of my favorite goalies in Capitals history. I know it was a little shaky at points, but still a class act. In any event, it speaks volumes about the kind of players that they are, that they do the extra work when it's not required. Contractually, they only have to play games and, this and that. They definitely don't need to be here that early, but it says a lot. And let's not forget, this group is going to have, like I said, both of them, a chip on their shoulder from last year. Made it to the playoffs, got fanned out in the second round. But all things considered, really good. Other players as well. Sam Onis was out there, Maryland native, now owner in Belarus, playing for Dynamo Minsk. And some other players as well. There's players from the Ottawa Senators and just, a group activity and, getting in some real work with some, pro level guys, I think is huge as well. So you take a look at it. DC is getting busy early. Training camp is not far off and you can feel it. And again, of course, keep it to Locked On Capitals. It is your daily podcast covering the Capitals. And that is what I do 5 days a week, all season long. I'm excited, as you can imagine, as someone that covers this team, that all things considered, I think that the Capitals did well, and I said that it was Stanley Cup final or bust or all that. And I wish it was the case, but they made it to the second round. And you take a look at all the teams that didn't even make it to the playoffs, period. Now, I don't want to set the bar so low that that's my expectation next year, but all things considered, I like that the Capitals, some of the players are showing up early, and you're going to see a whole lot more showing up here in the days and weeks that follow, that it's hockey time, baby, and the Capitals have a chip on their shoulder to show to the Metro, to the rest of the NHL, that we're back and we're going to hit you with both barrels. All right, so coming up here after the break, we're going to talk about Nicklas Bäckström, number 19. There is a lot to like about that guy. And one of the things that he said in an interview that I'll talk about in the next segment is that was ever only the Capitals or Brynäs if a guy that spent the duration of his NHL career here in Washington. What's next for Nicky? I'll break it all down straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in the final segment, we're talking about Nicklas Bäckström and an interview that he did in a website called hockeysverige.se. What that means is Hockey Sweden .ea. So Hockey Sweden. He did an interview there, and he talked about the Capitals, the long time that he played with the Capitals, and that he could have gone anywhere that he wanted to. An elite center that set up Alex Ovechkin, assisted on more Alex Ovechkin goals than anyone else. A quiet guy, just went out there and did his business and wasn't looking for the limelight. He was fine with that light being shined squarely on Alex Ovechkin. But in this interview with Sverige, hockeysverige.se, he talks about his time with the Capitals and how much money. That's another thing. It was and I'll get to here as well. How much money is he going to get paid over in Sweden? So let's dive into all of that. There is still much to get to in this episode. So in segment 3 here, that's the tough thing. Is Nicklas Bäckström stepping away from hockey for sure. Right, that last season he was on the long-term injured reserve. There was no fanfare. There was a whole lot more for TJ Oshie. He just quietly went out into the sunset. Nicklas Bäckström, being for the Capitals for nearly 2 decades. It's officially done in the NHL, and he's heading back to Sweden to play with the Brynäs, the team where it all began. It is a full circle moment, a bookend. Started with Brynäs, played with the Capitals, ending it with Brynäs, and playing pro hockey. In the United States here, you got to understand that is still a part of the Swedish Hockey League and still pro elite level hockey. Now, taking a look at him and what he accomplished in his time in the NHL, the numbers: 1,033 points in 1,105 games, and another 114 points in the playoffs. And of course, we'll remember 2018 and how he was instrumental in the Stanley Cup victory. But that only tells half the story. He was the Capital system. He made the plays. He fed Ovechkin. He brought the calm, the control. And I think, you take a look at it, he was the opposite of Alex Ovechkin in a lot of different ways. Still 2 great players, that complemented each other very well. Alex Ovechkin was the ostentatious goal scorer, with the big cowboy hat in the All-Star game, and the goalie and the hockey stick that was on fire. And you got Nicklas Bäckström, just like, I'll just serve him up, some sweet sauce or passes, and that's my business here. But when he talks about his time, he was that guy. He was the calm. And now he heads back over to Sweden. In his own words, no regrets. In that interview, he said, quote, "It was always either Brynäs F or Washington. That was it," unquote. No other NHL teams never crossed his mind. That's the loyalty you don't see anymore. And you got to know that his agent probably told him about, hey, you can make all this money to go to the Rangers or the Penguins or the Kings or this or that. And he said, no, I'm happy playing right here. And you talk about it. It is a bittersweet moment. He said no. He's proud, satisfied. He accomplished what he set out to do. The injuries were frustrating. The hip issues, that was the tough thing. Your heart went out to him. He said, I didn't want to do it. I had to do it. I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't play with my kids. And he said that, before he laced up the skates to even play over in Sweden to practice, he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to do that. But he is ready to go here. The recovery setbacks, he gave everything to the game. He did everything he could possibly do to play for the Capitals. It just wasn't enough. But now he's happy. He's back at home in Sweden. His kids are in Brynäs fans now as well. He gets to play in front of them and play the game he loves one more time. One more season is what he signed up for. And, you take a look at his career, it'll definitely be a story to follow next season. I know that the Capitals are busy, and I know that we do have some fans, listeners, if you will, viewers on YouTube to this show over in Sweden. So keep us in the loop over there. The players or the people that listen and watch this show, I sometimes talk to you on Twitter or on YouTube. Just keep us in the know. And let us know what's going on with Nicky over in Sweden. And the good thing about all of this is that this isn't the end of his career. If you want to look at it one way, it's the end of an era. And turning the page, the inevitable page that's going to be turned, as we know that Alex Ovechkin is, very well could be playing his last season. Same goes for John Carlson. We already seen Oshie, Kuznetsov, and, all these different players that were so huge for this team for years move on. But for right here, right now, in the 25-26 season, Ovi's still here. Carlson's still here. But the thing about it, the hard part, I think that, and what can make some Capitals fans, almost emotional, is he was the heartbeat. He was the thinker. He was the guy that knew where the puck should go. A quiet guy, did not need to bang his own drum. He just went out there and executed every single game. And the one thing I want to say is I hope that, maybe it's not done for him, with the Capitals, except maybe not as a player, maybe, in a suit, maybe not in skates, a development role, something like that, front office, something, because, that hockey brain, it needs to stay in the game. And if he could do that with the Capitals, that would be great. That's me, that's me projecting my wants onto him. I know that he is comfortable playing, and living in his home country of Sweden, of course. But I think that if he would ever entertain the thought of it, I think that would be a good thing. As if you take a look at it, it seems Nicklas Bäckström being a coach in some capacity, he just played. But if you take a look around the NHL, most of the coaches that you see out there are former players. So at some point, like I said, development, front office, whatever the case might be, if he could, circle back to the Capitals at some point, that would be really great. But all things considered, to put a bow on his career, one of the best to ever lace up the skates for the Capitals. His number will be hung up in the rafters in DC for everyone to remember, because I think, he is a guy that, I think sometimes gets forgotten about. Alex Ovechkin, the Gretzky thing, and everything else. The guys that are the showboats are the ones that get the attention. But you got to think that Alex Ovechkin would not be the goal scorer he is today if it wasn't got like guys like number 19. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily Capitals podcast. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what make this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week. Available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.